Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome to my Afcon Matchday 1 prediction video where the time has finally arrived for Afcon 2023. I've been waiting for a very long time for this moment, not just because I'm a South African and we got left out of the last tournament, which we're not going to talk about, but of course we're not just talking about one nation today. We've got 12 fantastic games for round 1 of Afcon 2023. But of course, before we jump into those fantastic fixtures, let me know in the comment section down below, even if you're not from Africa, which African nation you'll be supporting throughout this tournament. Obviously, as a South African, I kind of have to support South Africa, but let me know who you'll be supporting. But of course, without rambling on for much longer, jumping into our first game of Afcon 2023, we've got Cote d'Ivoire versus Guinea-Bissau. Now, obviously, Ivory Coast being the host nation of this tournament, they kind of are favourites for a fixture like this, and I do think they'll deliver on that promise with a 2-1 win. Saying that though, I don't think you should sleep on Guinea-Bissau, being the only nation to get a win from Nigeria in the Afcon qualifiers. I think there could be serious dark horses in a competition like this, and they could potentially get out of the group here in a very difficult group. But ultimately, I do think Cote d'Ivoire, I've said this time in and time out, as the host nations, they've obviously got the backing of the fans. I ultimately do think they have the best midfield in Africa. I mean, Seko Fofana, Frank Kessie, Sangare.
I like it a lot.
You can't ask for much better. And I do think once again Cote d'Ivoire as a nation, if they gel well together here, could be super deadly, and I think they'll get a 2-1 win. Now jumping into our next game, Nigeria versus Equatorial Guinea. Now of course looking at this, the Super Eagles, the big question is, will they be soaring high as Eagles this competition, or will they be shot down like clay pigeons?
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
I guess only time will tell. I think there's a lot of expectations on a team like this. They've got the two Victors up front with Boniface and Osimhen, two of the deadliest strikers in world football at the moment. But saying that, I don't think we should underestimate Guinea-Bissau, or Equatorial Guinea should I say. Ultimately, they are unbeaten in their last 5 games, and I could potentially see a draw here, especially considering Nigeria have drawn their last 2 World Cup qualifier games, so they haven't been as impressive as I would like them to be. But ultimately, I do think Nigeria are still the favourites here. I know I'm contradicting what I just said, but I am going to give them a 3-0 win. I do think they are the best attacking team in Africa at the moment. Defensively, yes, they definitely have to pick up a level, but versus Equatorial Guinea, I feel like something special could happen here. Once again, they've got, in my opinion, one of the best strikers in world football at the moment, and yeah, you can't not back them. Now, jumping into our next game, it is Egypt versus Mozambique. The obviously Egyptian king, Mo Salah, will play a major part for Egypt here. I think he will be missed at Liverpool over the next month. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of impacts the Premier League title race, but ultimately so important for Egypt. But I don't think this is going to be easy versus Mozambique.
Say what now?
I know Mozambique are considered a lesser African nation, but ultimately it is a David and Goliath kind of battle because versus top nations, Mozambique normally does threaten a bit or defensively can be very difficult to break down, weirdly enough. Ultimately though, I do think Egypt still will win this one. I will give them a 1-0 win. It's nothing against their attacking ability, but I just kind of give Mozambique a lot of credit here, and hopefully it's not a complete thrashing. Now, jumping into our next game, it is Ghana versus Cape Verde. Now, I've said this on so many occasions. I so back Chris Hughton and the project that he's working on with Ghana. Ultimately, though, I just don't think things have gelled quite well together. I'm not seeing a lot of exciting kind of progressive football at Ghana.
No, he's got a point.
Yes, I know they were unbeaten technically at the Afcon qualifiers, winning 3 and drawing 3, but I haven't been convinced with their performances. There are definitely a lot of games where they look like they could have lost, even versus nations like Madagascar. But ultimately, I have to back Ghana here. I do think the Black Stars will do it. They've got so many exciting players. I'm happy Mohamed Salisu isn't out with injury. I think losing Tariq Lamptey though could be huge. But Mohamed Kudus once again, star boy for Africa in my opinion at the moment. I do think he'll be the difference maker, and he'll at least drive them to a 1-0 win. We've got the current title holders of Africa with Senegal versus Gambia. Now look at Senegal. I've said in a previous video that they very much have an aging squad at the moment, and by that I mean looking at their best players, whether it be an Edouard Mendy, a Koulibaly, Sadio Mane.
I said it last time I was on it, he's the best football player in the world.
They are definitely aging, but they've still got the quality of top quality players, and there are a lot of youngsters as well at Senegal at the moment. And versus Gambia, who, yes, much like Cape Verde, I thought had impressive moments in the last Afcon, there is a clear favourite here, and I have to go for them. I do think Senegal will take this one 3-0, and once again, I think it would be a major shock if they lost points here. Now, jumping into our next game, we've got Guinea versus Cameroon. Now, looking at Guinea, they've obviously got Garassi up front, who is a lethal striker in the Bundesliga. But weirdly enough, when it comes to playing for the national team, he's almost, I don't want to say non-existent, but you don't tend to see him.
But I cannot see, I'm legally blind.
I do think versus Cameroon, who once again third place in the last Afcon, I think they did really well in the last World Cup, obviously beat Brazil, one of the best nations in world football. I think it would be foolish almost not to go for Cameroon on this one. Saying that, it is African football, and I do tend to notice there are a lot of draws there, and I haven't predicted any draws, but I just don't believe in predicting draws. I think Cameroon need to win this one, and I think they will do so, just by a slight margin. Now, next up, we do have Algeria versus Angola, and to me, this is one of the easiest predictions here, another 3-0 win. Look at Angola, once again, nothing bad against them, but I do think Algeria maybe was the best African nation at the World Cup or at the Afcon qualifiers. Obviously, almost a perfect run. They did win 5 and just draw 1 out of their 6 games. On the attacking front, they looked super solid. Defensively, they weren't bad either. I think Aouar is a brilliant addition to their midfield. Obviously, Riyad Mahrez, in my opinion, super underrated. Should go down further in African history than he already currently does. So underrated, but ultimately, I do think Algeria, they'll be cooking here. Now, heading into our next game, we've got Burkina Faso versus Mauritania. Now, once again, relatively easy in my opinion. I do think Burkina Faso are one of the best teams or most underrated teams in Africa. No one really gives them the credit they deserve. I am going to give them a 2-0 win here. Once again, very solid team. I think they're very consistent. We saw that at the Afcon qualifiers. We saw that at the last tournament. They are kind of like that nation. I don't know who to compare them to. Maybe like a West Ham United in the Premier League, where no one will ever favour them to win it, but they have potential to cause upsets and to really get high up on the table.
They have been training with me 2, 3, 4 times.
I do think that really does summarise Burkina Faso quite well, and I do think they'll take down Mauritania. Now, next up, we've got a relatively big one with Namibia versus Tunisia. Now, obviously, Tunisia are the strong favourites here. It was only 2-3 years ago that they won the Kirin Cup. They weren't bad at the World Cup, beating eventualist finalist France. I think people tend to forget about that. We're looking at Namibia once again. They're also not bad when it comes to African football, only within the last year beating Cameroon. I feel like this has potential to be closer than a lot of people underestimate or estimate, but I do think ultimately, once again, it would be foolish not to give the likes of Tunisia credit.
You are nothing, you are a fool, and you are a waste of time.
I think a huge reason to why they haven't done well over the last year or two is they've suffered a lot with injuries, but at the moment, super solid team, and versus Namibia, I'm going to go for at least a 2-1 win. Now, next up, we've got my home nation of South Africa versus Mali. Now, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I was absolutely terrified of this group and terrified of an opponent like Mali.
No question about it, I am ready to get hurt again.
They've got a fantastic squad at the moment. Obviously, Bissouma being the main man in the midfield for them. I feel like he could totally crunch down South Africa. Obviously, Lyle Foster, the main attacker for South Africa, not going to this tournament and staying at Burnley could be a major loss for us. Ultimately, I wouldn't say that we're favourites heading into this game, but saying that we are the nation who, yes, a weaker Morocco team, did beat Morocco a few months ago, the team who made it the furthest an African nation has ever done at a World Cup, but ultimately it could be a very close game. But I'm not going to go for a loss here, just mainly because I feel like I'm going to cry if I do so, but I am going to predict a 1-1 draw here. I do think South Africa can get something out of it, but ultimately I do think it will be a midfield battle, and if Mali win it, I do think the midfield will decide it.
You were the chosen one!
Now, jumping into our next game, we've got Morocco versus Tanzania, which maybe this one's a bit too easy in my opinion. I'm sorry, Tanzania. I know that doesn't sound like a nice thing to hear, but I'm going to go for a 4-0 win here. As I said, Morocco, in my opinion, the best African nation in world football at the moment, should easily be in FIFA's top 10 rankings. Looking at Tanzania, I do think one of the weakest African nations in this tournament. I think they had the least goals scored to qualify here, so I don't think there will be a goal-scoring threat. Where Morocco, defensively, super solid. They They had the goalkeeper who won not the Yashin Award, but made it the highest in the Ballon d'Or ranking last year. On the attacking front, super solid. I think Ziyech has been brilliant in the Champions League for Galatasaray. Once again, Morocco should win this one 4-0. Now, jumping into our next game and our last game of Match Week 1, we've got the DR Congo versus Zambia. Now, in my opinion, this might be the closest game of Match Week 1, as I view these two teams as incredibly similar. I think both of them have potential to be very exciting on the attacking front. I think defensively can both lock out other teams completely, and maybe in terms of midfield battles, also very similar in my opinion. And once again, if I can't decide a winner here, I feel like it is only fair to go for a 2-2 draw.
Boring.
I think the likes of Visa from Brentford will be super deadly up front for the DRC. We're looking at Patson Daka. I think he's totally lethal for Zambia and was crucial in that win versus Cote d'Ivoire. Once again, could be a super close game. If there was a winner, maybe I would go for Zambia, but I'm just feeling it. You know what? Actually, no, I'm going to be brave here. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win here, and once again, put kind of all my marbles on the table.
Oh, behave.
But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my Afcon Matchday 1 predictions. Obviously, I'll see you guys for the rest of the match weeks, along with a lot more Afcon content over the next month. Let me know in the comment section down below which nation you'll be supporting, what your predictions are, and I'll see you all very soon. Finn, F1, double N, cheers.